The Iridian ambassador smirked. With a condescending gesture at the holographic display, he mocked humanity's primitive tracked vehicles, openly dismissing the outdated tanks that had once been the pride of Earth's armies. These ancient relics are no match for our advanced hover tanks with plasma cannons and energy shielding, Ambassador Solaris proclaimed, his voice dripping with disdain. We could easily conquer your planet with our superior technology. In the tense meeting room, the human military leaders bristled at the brazen threat. Grizzled Tank Commander David Cook spoke up, his rough voice cutting through the silence. He locked eyes with Solaris, issuing a bold challenge. I'll prove our tanks can still kick your sorry alien asses. Meet us on the Martian desert plains in 3 days. My unit against your best. Intrigued by the human's audacity, Solaris accepted with a nod. As the Iridians departed, the human generals turned to David in disbelief. Even our most advanced tanks are a generation behind their tech, General Riggs said. How do you plan to win this? David's eyes gleamed with confidence. I've got a strategy, but I need our top crews and access to some museum relics. Though skeptical, the generals agreed to the unorthodox plan. The stakes couldn't be higher. If David failed, the Iridians would surely invade and enslave humanity. Earth's fate now hinged on a ragtag unit of ancient war machines, and the daring veteran determined to lead them to victory against impossible odds. As the generals scrambled to gather humanity's remaining forces, Commander David Cook boarded a hypersonic transport with his hand-picked team of the best tank crews Earth had to offer. The sleek craft streaked across the sky, rapidly descending on the Bovington Tank Museum. Dr. Ian Blackwell greeted them at the entrance, his face grave. I've been briefed on the situation, Commander. I must admit I have my doubts about this plan of yours. David clapped the curator on the shoulder. I understand your skepticism, Doctor, but with the right upgrades, these old warhorses will give us the edge we need against those Iridian bastards. As they strode through the museum's halls, David laid out his audacious scheme. We'll retrofit a squadron of the toughest tanks from World War II, Shermans, Churchills, Cromwells, with cutting-edge tech, advanced composite armor, miniaturized fusion reactors, railguns. They won't know what hit 'em. Dr. Blackwell frowned. These tanks were designed for 20th century warfare, Commander. How can you be sure they'll stand up to the Iridians' plasma weapons? That's the beauty of it, Doc. These old tanks were built like brick shithouses, reliable, battle-tested. With modern upgrades, they'll be damn near indestructible. David's eyes gleamed with conviction. Trust me, I've got a gut feeling about this. As the team set to work, sparks flying as they welded advanced alloys onto the vintage tanks, an urgent message came through on David's comms. General Riggs appeared, his face grim. Commander, we've got a problem. That slimy fuck Solaris just raised the stakes. Says if his hover tanks win, we have to surrender, unconditionally. David's jaw clenched. Like hell we will. We'll show that arrogant prick what humans are made of. With a renewed sense of urgency, the crew worked around the clock, fitting the old tanks with technology that would have seemed like science fiction to their original designers. Just as they finished the final upgrades, another message burst through the comms. It's Solaris, Lieutenant Hawkins shouted. He's jumped the gun. His forces are already tearing up the Mars colonies. Shit, David growled. Saddle up, people. Looks like that scaly bastard couldn't wait for a fair fight. The squadron of retrofitted tanks rumbled up the ramp of the waiting transport ship, their fusion engines humming with barely restrained power. As the ship lifted off, racing toward the red planet, David stared out the viewport at the stars streaking by. This was it, the fight of their lives, the battle that would decide the fate of humanity, and he'd be damned if he let some sniveling alien dictator enslave his people. Hold on, Solaris, he muttered, his eyes hard as flint. We're coming for you. The rumble of the transport ship's engines filled the cargo bay as David gathered his tank commanders around a flickering hologram of the Martian surface. Zooming in on the human settlement, he jabbed a finger at the semicircle of Iridian hover tanks raining plasma fire down on the buildings. All right, listen up, Solaris has his forces deployed in a standard siege formation. We're going to hit them hard and fast before they know what's happening. David's eyes flashed as he assigned targets to each tank. Remember, speed and surprise are key. Don't give them a chance to regroup. The commanders nodded grimly, their faces illuminated by the hologram's eerie glow. As the transport shuddered to a landing on the red Martian soil, David slammed his fist against the bay door controls. Let's show these alien bastards what humans are made of. The upgraded tanks roared out of the transport, kicking up clouds of dust as they charged towards the besieged settlement. In the distance, the Iridian hover tanks swiveled to face the unexpected threat, their plasma cannons glowing with deadly energy. Solaris' voice crackled over the comms, dripping with contempt. Foolish humans, your primitive machines are no match for our superior technology. Crush them! The Iridian tanks surged forward, their anti-grav engines humming with power. David's lips curled into a snarl as he watched them approach. All units, lock targets, and prepare to engage. As the two forces closed in, the Martian landscape trembling beneath the thunder of their engines, David's voice rang out over the comms. Fire! The retrofitted tanks' railguns erupted in a deafening cacophony, hurling hypersonic projectiles at the advancing Iridians. The alien energy shields flared and shattered under the onslaught, unable to withstand the sheer kinetic force of the human weapons. Hover tanks erupted into fireballs, raining debris across the battlefield as their anti-grav systems failed catastrophically. Solaris's voice rose in a shriek of disbelief as he watched his forces crumble. Impossible! Fall back and regroup now! The remaining Iridian tanks whirled and fled, desperately trying to put distance between themselves and the human onslaught. David's eyes narrowed as he watched them retreat. Oh, no, you don't. All units, pursue and destroy. The human tanks roared forward, their engines screaming as they chased the fleeing Iridians across the Martian desert. Plasma bolts and railgun slugs crisscrossed the sky as the two forces dueled at breakneck speeds, carving scars into the ancient landscape. David gripped the edge of his holotable, his knuckles white as he watched the pursuit unfold. They had caught Solaris off guard, but the battle was far from over. The Iridian commander was cunning and ruthless, and he still had plenty of tricks up his sleeve. But for now the humans had the upper hand, and David was determined to press their advantage. He leaned forward, his voice hard as he issued new orders to his tank crews. They would hunt down every last Iridian tank and show Solaris the true meaning of human resolve. As the Martian landscape blurred beneath the treads of his Churchill tank, David's eyes narrowed, his tactical mind racing. The Iridians' retreat had been too easy, too neat. Solaris was up to something. Suddenly realization hit him like a plasma bolt. It's a trap, he barked into the comms. Solaris is luring us into a kill zone. Ahead, the rocky walls of a massive canyon loomed, its shadows deep and foreboding. David's gut clenched, the perfect place for an ambush. All units split formation, he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos of the pursuit. Alpha Group with me will keep chasing that bastard Solaris. Bravo Group, circle around and flank the canyon. If those scaly fuckers are waiting for us, I want you to rain hell down on them from above. Acknowledgements crackled through the comms as the tanks peeled off, the Shermans and Cromwells of Bravo Group veering away to navigate the treacherous terrain surrounding the canyon. David gripped the edge of his holotable, his knuckles white as his Churchill thundered into the canyon. The other tanks of Alpha Group close behind. The towering walls seemed to close in around them, blocking out the weak Martian sunlight. A flicker of movement caught David's eye. Contact left, he yelled, just as a dozen Iridian hover tanks emerged from concealed positions on the canyon walls, their plasma cannons flaring to life. The world exploded in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. David's Churchill shuddered as a plasma bolt slammed into its flank, the advanced composite armor barely absorbing the impact. Warning lights flashed across the holodisplays, angry and insistent. Return fire, David roared, his gunner already sighting in on the nearest hover tank. The Churchill's railgun spoke, hurling a hypersonic slug into the Iridian vehicle's power core. it erupted in a blinding fireball, raining molten debris down on the canyon floor. But the Iridians kept coming, their elevated positions giving them a clear line of fire. Plasma bolts stitched across the canyon, searing deep scars into the rock and slagging human armor. One by one, the tanks of Alpha Group fell, their hulls breached, and crew compartments exposed to the merciless vacuum. David gritted his teeth, refusing to give in to the icy tendrils of fear snaking through his gut. They just had to hold out a little longer. Suddenly a new sound echoed through the canyon, a thunder that drowned out even the roar of plasma fire. David's heart leapt as he saw the tanks of Bravo Group cresting the ridge above, their railguns already spitting death down on the exposed Iridians. The hover tanks tried to pivot, to bring their weapons to bear on the new threat, but they were too slow. The Sherman's advanced targeting systems locked on with ruthless precision, each shot finding a vital system or power core. Iridian tanks exploded like miniature suns, their anti-grav engines overloading in cascades of blue-white energy. Through the smoke and fire, David caught a glimpse of Solaris's command tank, a monstrous floating fortress that dwarfed the other Iridian vehicles. Its plasma cannons swiveled, unleashing a torrent of fire at the Churchill, as David urged his tank forward, teeth bared in a savage grin. "Ramming speed!" he shouted, his crew responding with wordless cries of defiance. The Churchill surged ahead, its fusion reactor howling as it poured every ounce of power into the drive systems. Solaris's command tank loomed ahead, its energy shields flickering under the impact of railgun rounds. David felt a strange calm settle over him as the distance closed, even as the Iridian commander unleashed a storm of plasma against the Churchill's armor. The world seemed to hold its breath as the two behemoths hurtled towards each other, human steel and Iridian plasma, the unstoppable force and the immovable object. David's last thought before impact was of Earth, of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. And then, with a crash that shook the very stones of Mars, the two metal behemoths collided in a cataclysmic impact that shook the very foundations of Mars. The front armor of both tanks sheared off, crumpling like tin foil under the immense force. David's Churchill, its hull battered but unbroken, pressed forward, the exposed railgun glowing white-hot as it charged for a point-blank shot. Inside Solaris's command tank, alarms blared and warning lights flashed red. The Iridian commander's eyes widened in disbelief as he saw the human tank's weapon aimed directly at his own vehicle's heart. The railgun fired, the hypersonic slug tearing through the command tank's reactor core like a bullet through paper. For a split second there was silence. Then the Iridian tank exploded in a blinding flash of light and heat, the shockwave rippling out across the canyon. David shielded his eyes as debris rained down around his Churchill. Through the smoke and dust, he could see the remaining Iridian tanks faltering, their formation crumbling without Solaris's guidance. "All units, press the attack," David roared over the comms. "Take those bastards down." The human tank surged forward, railguns and fusion cannons roaring as they cut through the disoriented Iridians. The alien tanks scattered, their coordination gone, easy prey for the battle-hardened human crews. One by one, the Iridian tanks fell, reduced to smoldering wrecks by the relentless onslaught. The once proud alien machines lay broken on the red sands, their anti-grav engines sputtering and dying. As the last enemy tank exploded in a shower of molten metal, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. David popped the hatch of his Churchill, climbing out to survey the carnage. The Martian landscape was scarred and pitted, the red dunes pockmarked with craters, and littered with the twisted remains of hover tanks. Smoke rose from the wrecks in thick, oily columns, obscuring the weak sunlight. David's heart clenched as he saw the shattered hulls of human tanks among the debris. Too many had fallen, brave men and women who had given their lives to protect Earth and its colonies. The other surviving tank crews emerged from their vehicles, their faces smeared with grime and sweat. They gathered around David, a ragged band of heroes forged in the crucible of war. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, a transmission from Earth breaking through the static. Commander Cook, this is General Riggs. We've received a message from the Iridian leadership. David's jaw tightened as he listened to the general's words. The Iridians, reeling from the defeat of their supposedly invincible forces, had issued an ultimatum. They demanded the immediate surrender of all human colonies and the disbanding of Earth's military, or they would unleash the full might of their empire upon humanity. A cold fury settled over David as he considered the implications. This was just the beginning, he realized. The Iridians would not rest until they had subjugated or destroyed every last human settlement. He looked at his crew, saw the grim determination etched into their faces. They knew, as he did, that the road ahead would be long and bloody. But they would not yield, would not surrender to the alien threat. As the sun began to set over the battle-scarred plains of Mars, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, David squared his shoulders. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. He knew that they would need every ounce of courage and resolve in the days to come. For now, though, they would regroup, tend to their wounds and prepare for the next fight. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, on the ancient treads of their tanks and the indomitable will of their crews. David took one last look at the battlefield, the smoke and wreckage a testament to the sacrifices made and the challenges yet to come. Then he turned to his crew, his voice steady and strong. "All right, people, let's get our tanks patched up and ready to roll. We've got a war to win." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.